戒忘追供八戒诺，戒忘追供八戒诺，依悉可罗地我前比嘎。基督东则桥多黑如嘎，全灯把为往事怕错记，周吞无着马路恰度你，滚着三度杀气丧给。就凭着真诚力求，恨住激增拉门所望的，戒忘追供八戒诺，戒忘追供八戒诺，勇猛突比一给让修净，地顿此身三道观八义，念多着比八人用走比。就单对观不下单色，得那地那干桥开在所，他必担心我中总必求，着观着为三者所无的。戒忘追供八戒诺，戒忘追供八戒诺，戒必戒为供八老塞心。作比等拉罗米波班中，尊宾着关系太了丧逼，宁不断机单增小单手。Be one. 过茶水泡的深度，跟着小灯些把轮入手。
So Christy, whenever you are ready, you can start. Or do you want me to start? Yeah, so we start then with the opening recitations. Let me say a few words about the opening recitation. So in the opening recitations that we traditionally do in the lineage that I'm a part of, we have what is called the Bodhichitta aspiration aspect of Bodhichitta and the engagement aspect of Bodhichitta. Bodhichitta in a nutshell is the resolve, the vow to achieve the state of being awake, which is what Buddha really means. So to the resolve, the aspiration, the desire to wake up for the benefit of not just ourselves, but for the benefit of all beings. So there is the aspiration aspect of that. And then there is the carrying out of that resolution. So the first two recitations are basically on that particular subject. So in the different translation rooms, in the Vietnamese audio room, in the Spanish audio room, and then in the main audio room, we will read these two recitations one time in the three different languages. Then we will come back to chanting them in Tibetan. And so I'll start. And so also the interpreter in Vietnamese and the interpreter in Spanish will read in the respective languages. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. So we'll go on to the next two recitations, which is Refuge. Refuge is taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The Buddha is the one who has awakened. The Dharma are the teachings that the awakened one gave in order to lead us to the same state of being awake. And the Sangha in this context is not just the ordinary Sangha, which we say you don't take refuge in. You rely on each other, of course, but the Sangha referred to here as an object of refuge are those who have applied the Dharma to a degree where they have themselves become certain. They have been firmly established in the realization of the Dharma, in the actualization of the Dharma, so that they become reliable guides for us. So this is our reference point. So they are like in ancient times, sailors and travelers would look for the pole star in order to get direction. So Buddha, Dharma, Sangha provides clear direction for us. Following this recitation, we recite what's known as the four immeasurable minds. These are immeasurable goodwill, or often translated as loving kindness, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. These are these four qualities of the mind that the Buddha pointed out as skillful states of mind, that if we are suffused in these four states of mind, and if we can expand this to the degree that it is immeasurable, he calls these the four divine dwellings. So you will feel divine, so to say, spectacular, right? If you can remain in the state of these four qualities. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. Yeah, so now if we can go all the way back up to the Tibetan. So just one time for auspicious connection, I'm going to recite this in Tibetan because for many, many generations, these have been done by the Tibetan people. It's one way to remember the kindness, as we say, of those who have held these practices and teachings through the centuries so that they now come down to us. Dala thangwa jebe da nobar jebe gek darba dan tamje gembe bardu chobara jeba tam jege zo jebe manang kadang nyambe senjen tamje dewa dan den dunya dander nerdu lana me payang dabra zobe chanju rinpoche Tobar de sama gege bardu lunga yisum gewala ko mashi bardu lunga yisum gewala ko de derene sunde nima santa samge bardu lunga yisum gewala ko Sanje Jodan Zoge Chonam La Chanchu Bardu Dane Kyabsu Chi Dage Jinsu Gebe Sonang Ke Rola Pencher Sanje Dubra Shu Manang Kadang Nyampe Senjen Tamje Dewa Dan Dewe Ginda Dembra Girji Dunya Dan Dunya Gi Gyudan Rewa Girji Dunya Mebe Dewa Dang Me Rewa Girji Nering Chadan Nida Drewe Danya La Nebra Girji. So now let us take a few moments to let both our body and mind to settle into their own places. The expression letting body and mind settle into their own places is a way of saying that we have to have some trust that if we get out of the way, so to say, if we stop interfering, then naturally our body and our mind, both these aspects, will quite naturally find their own places of rest, their own places of ease, and their own place of comfort. for body to settle into its own place. There are certain key points in relation to how to place our body that would allow it to more easily settle. This is sometimes expressed as isolating the body. What this means is to isolate or to remove the body from stress, from movement, to let the body become still. To do this, of course, it is necessary to make a resolve of some sort. So mentally, we have to resolve that for now, I will just be content to let the body settle quietly, to let the body become still, and to not move. But this resolve should not be taken with force. We're not trying to force the body to do anything. If anything, you can gently say to the body, finally now, you don't have to move anymore. You can just become quiet and still and rest. Outer and inner speech should also be isolated, which is outer speech, inner speech. We are also saying to speech, the other aspect of our being. Right now, you get a break. Right now, you get a few moments of just being quiet. And when body and speech are both isolated, then mind or the heart also gets a break. So then body, speech, and mind can settle quietly and at ease. So let us now together enjoy these few moments of body, speech, and mind settling. This opportunity to just be quiet and at rest. But remember that we want the mind to be present, stable, and radiant. So we don't want to be so relaxed that we fall asleep. And in case you do fall asleep, that's okay. At least you get some rest that way. We all have to start somewhere in this cultivating of the mind, training of the mind. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Modern technology has given those of us who have no magic powers to appear like magician. So now, in the middle of nowhere even, you are able to communicate with the rest of the world. I remember last month, when our Vietnamese Dharma brothers and sisters hosted a series of teachings from one of the main teachers of the lineage, Khenchen Nima. He was on his way to Ladakh. In the middle of nowhere, inside a tent, he was giving teachings and speaking to the rest of the world. So these are the times that we live in. Often we tend to complain about how technology has taken over our lives, but there's always another side to every story. So rather than spending too much time complaining and worrying about how technology has taken over our lives, we can also rejoice in the wonders of technology. So anyway, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all of you who have taken time to be with us here today. Anyway, so just so that all of you who are watching, I'm not talking to myself. I'm in the temple. There's a number of people here. I'm also not talking to spirits. They're very real people. You just cannot see them. So I want to first of all again thank the organizers of our Vietnamese Dharma brothers and sisters for organizing the series, for arranging with the Zoom and the interpreters so that we can all spend some time learning a little bit about, generally you could say about Buddhist meditation, then more specifically, the meditation that is based on this practice of using breath as the main object. So the technique involves the watching of this breath. And as to what the technique or how the technique will be used for what purpose, in a way that is really important to understand, which is really what we'll be spending these 6 weeks to develop. Because the solution to what the Buddha identified as the problem, the existential problem that we have, cannot simply be solved by watching breath. But watching breath becomes a very effective method to give rise to understanding that can then remove what we call mental defilements. Yes, so the 6 classes, even though that we're looking at text, but we're not looking at text in an intellectual way. We'll be looking at the text from the experiential way. Yeah, so as many of you know, probably, one of the 2 current heads of the Drigong Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism, which many of us are a part of. So His Holiness Kyabgon Chesang Rinpoche has in recent years started to teach and to train teachers to teach what he refers to as SHRAVASTI meditation. SHRAVASTI is a place in northern India. In ancient times, it's a bustling city. And interestingly, the Buddha actually lived on the outskirts of the city. So we might think, the Buddha lived in some jungle somewhere far away from noise, but he chose to live very close to one of the largest cities in India of that time. In fact, of all the places that he was at, historical sources said that he spent the longest number of years in SHRAVASTI. And so it was in SHRAVASTI that he taught this, how to use breath, paying attention to breath as a method, as a very helpful method to help us achieve clear seeing, clear understanding that can clear our hearts of mental defilements. And so based on that, His Holiness calls this SHRAVASTI meditation. So in a recent communication that His Holiness sent out to Drigong Kagyu centers and groups, communicating with the centers and the groups about this SHRAVASTI meditation, he mentioned that if people would like to learn more about this SHRAVASTI meditation, and particularly if people want to know where in the thousands of recorded teachings of the Buddha can we find the basis of this meditation, which is this sutra, meaning like teaching or discourse that the Buddha gave, called Anapanasati, which is, well, the normal translation is mindfulness of breathing. So there's one teaching that he gave, not long at all, short, but which clearly lays out this mindfulness of breathing technique. So he said in that communication, if you all want to learn more about this text and how it relates to this work of clearing our minds, our hearts of the mental defilements, he said, then you can get in touch with me, with Dr. Lai. But I think that was only intended for the centers in the US, and this is like pre-COVID, actually, this communication went out. So His Holiness is thinking, since I'm in the US, and so if there are US centers who are interested, get in touch with me. That's the only reason. It's not because I'm the only one who can talk about it. But then somehow that email went all over the place. Now suddenly some people thinking, oh, they have to ask me. But that's all accidental. So I want to clarify that. So he also said, for those, again, in the Americas, if you want to learn and do retreats, learn the meditation, to also another person he mentioned is Kemo. She is up in Maine, that you could also reach out to her if you want to learn more about the practical aspects, the actual meditation aspect of this. And so I know that the Vietnamese group has also hosted teachings by Kemo Droma recently. So you all should also refer to that and take that opportunity. I think Kemo is organizing some Zoom retreats that are coming up. So if you all have interest, you all can, join those programs. So first of all, I think let us do some basic definitions of terms. Because even though, like, for example, in English, we have words like meditation, mindfulness, concentration, and so on and so forth. And then the equivalent of these words, like in Pali or in Sanskrit or in Tibetan, dhyana, samadhi, bhavana. Even these words in the context of the Buddha, they were common words, but used by different teachers, different traditions, differently. Yeah, each tradition has their way of kind of, you could say, emphasizing a particular aspect of that word. So if we are unclear about some of these differences, then it could create a lot of confusion, especially these days when we have access to so many different things. So just type the word meditation on Google. You can find all kinds of things that is called meditation. So first, I think we should look at some of the basic definition of what the Buddha, what were the different words that the Buddha used that we now translate as meditation or mindfulness or concentration. And then from there, we can understand the role that this thing that we call mindfulness plays within the Buddha's program of, and what is the Buddha's program? What is the Buddha's agenda, so to say? So that too, we should say a little bit before we go into the details of this mindfulness of breathing sutra and what is taught in there. So first, what we generally translate as meditation. Right? So in the Buddha's own time, so I think this many of you have heard if you have attended some of my programs, but let's repeat this, right? In the Buddha's own time, he used the word bhavana a lot, specifically chitta bhavana. Chitta, simply right now we say mind, but footnote, mind is not a thing. Mind is a process, according to the Buddha's understanding. Mind is not a thing, it's a process. So that's the footnote. Yeah? So chitta, mind, bhavana. So the word is bhavana. Bhavana is actually nowhere close to the English word meditate. But bhavana is closer to the English word to cultivate, to develop. So to cultivate and to develop chitta, to cultivate or to develop this thing that we call mind. Chitta bhavana. So this verb bhavana, historians say in the Buddha's own time, in fact, it wasn't really a word that the spiritual people used. In fact, it was a word that farmers used in relation to cultivating their land. So there we already have a hint, right? The Buddha's understanding of bhavana, what we call meditation, is an active process. It's not spacing out. In fact, even like popular version of meditation, which is like something along the lines of bare awareness, just be a witness to everything going on, right? From this perspective, if a farmer does that to his or her farm, finish, that business. If you're growing vegetables, right, you cannot just like barely be present and the weeds grow, your vegetable grow. In the end, the weeds are going to take over. So bhavana is a process of removing, right, that which does not belong to that plot that you're cultivating. Bhavana involves strengthening the kale, lots of kale, Anisha, the kale that you want to grow, right? You put the fertilizer that is appropriate and the nitrogen that you introduce to the soil. So you have to do the work of removing. So what we are removing in the meditation that the Buddha taught is what he identified as mental defilements, as that which clouds, that which obscures the heart. What we want to cultivate is the qualities of the heart that in especially the Mahayana tradition, we say is innate to the heart. It's the qualities of skillful attention, the qualities of goodwill, compassion, clarity, insight, disentanglement. So these are all those qualities that we want to bring forth through this cultivation, through this bhavana. Uh, yes, of course, some of you may be familiar with such expressions found in, say, the Mahamudra tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, or Dzogchen, or Chan or Zen Buddhism, that they may talk about, like just remaining in this clear awareness and bare awareness. But that is actually a very advanced stage of the practice, whereby the mental defilements, the coarse mental defilements, have already been put to rest. And the nature of mind has been correctly recognized and identified. Then, yes, if you have removed all the weeds, then yes, you can just watch your vegetable grow. But even that, from time to time, some other weed is still going to stick up, then you still have to pull it out. So it's not, I'm not saying that there isn't a point where all you're doing is just watching, say, the clear heart being clear. Yes, there is that part, but you cannot start by saying, oh, just watch this clear nature grow, because the weeds are going to take over faster. And that's why we are still here. How many lifetimes, Buddha says, we have come back again and again and again and again, because left to its own devices, the weeds are going to take over. So bhavana is to skillfully work on removing these mental defilements. Why is bhavana necessary or important? Because everything that we experience, that which we label as happiness, and that which we label as suffering, and that which we label as irrelevant or neutral, however we qualify whatever it is that we experience, from world peace to paradise to eternal life, to the end of the world, to the hells, and to eternal damnation, like everything from one end to the other end and in between. all of that, the Buddha says, where does that all happen? It happens because of mind or heart, whatever word you want to use. It's because of the mind, it's because of the heart. So the mind or the heart is that which determines what's going on. And so, given that, if the mind or the heart is obscured by mental defilements, then the result is what we would label as suffering, unhappiness, dissatisfaction. So in the Dhammapada, the very first verse, the first two stanzas of the Dhammapada, this very famous Buddhist text, there the Buddha said, everything is determined by the heart or by the mind. When this heart or mind is obscured, then we get dragged around by these mental defilements. Then we suffer. But when the mind or the heart is free of these mental defilements, then we are free. And then happiness. So bhavana is the work of cultivating then skillful habits and removing unskillful habits. Yeah, so that's bhavana. So then the other important term to define is what we translate now as mindfulness, right? Which in fact, in Spanish at least, there's no word like this. It's really difficult to translate this thing that in English is called mindfulness. But in Pali, it's sati. And in Sanskrit, is smriti. Yeah? And so that there is no easy word in Spanish for mindfulness is not surprising at all, because it's a particular word made up by someone who was translating Pali Buddhist texts into English. He didn't exactly make up the word mindfulness, but he revived a very ancient word, mindfulness. So anyway, the original is sati or smriti. Sati or smriti, just right now, because we're going to look into it in more detail. First of all, it's not a noun, like mindfulness. Mindfulness is a noun, but it's not a noun. It's a verb. Sati is to sati. What is to sati? Is to, the definition, basic definition is to, literal definition is to remember. To remember. In other words, to not forget. But the more general meaning is somewhat like we say, pay attention. Like, so connotation of, don't be somewhere else, be here. Pay attention. Not necessarily focus, like, your face become like that when you're focusing, but just pay attention. Presence. To be present, to have presence of mind. So in that way, mindful. Not the mindful, but to be present with your mind. To pay attention. To not be lost. Lost where? Lost in the mental defilements. Do not be dragged around by the mental defilements. To be present. Sati. So the Buddha, in clarifying what is this sati that he's talking about, he also defined it this way. He said, the enemy of sati, meaning like the opposite of sati, what is that? Distraction. So then to practice sati is to be undistracted, to not be distracted. And so that is also one way to understand what sati is. Not to be distracted, to remain undistracted. In Buddhist psychology, this sati, this opposite of distraction, right? Attentiveness, right? It's a mental factor. We call it a mental factor. So in terms of it being a mental factor, Buddha also mentioned skillful mental factor, or skillful sati and unskillful sati. So in that sense, sati is morally neutral. So unskillful sati would be, if remembering sati or defining sati as to remember, right? So you get stuck in the argument that you have with someone yesterday or an hour ago. That is unskillful mindfulness or unskillful sati. You are undistracted for sure, but undistracted by something that is like, torturing you. So there's also skillful or unskillful sati. Obviously, what the Buddha is advocating that we develop is skillful sati. What he calls skillful sati. So in this way of understanding what bhavana or meditation is and what sati or mindfulness is, in this sense, we are all already great meditators and great mindfulness people, right? Because we cultivate all kinds of nonsense. We are mindful and we never forget the wrongs that have been done to us, the resentment. We are great meditators, so meditating on the wrong stuff, cultivating suffering. So if anyone says, oh, no, I cannot meditate. Oh, I don't know how to meditate. Oh, no. We are all naturally experts. Except that our skill is directed in the wrong direction. So that's why, right, as I started off this class saying, we sometimes think, oh, I just need to learn how to meditate. Actually, we don't need to learn how to meditate. We need to switch camps on what we're meditating on, what we are habitualizing. So the founder of this lineage of Drigong Kagyu, he says, what we call meditation is simply habitualization, to habituate. So in Tibetan is gomba mayin, gomba yin. It's a play of this word, gomba, gomba, gomba mayin, gomba yin. So it says what we call meditation is simply habituation. And in that sense, right now, we have habituated habits of suffering. So what we really need is to rehabitualize habits of happiness, habits of unentanglement, Don't get all tied up. Don't get dragged around by our mental defilements. So in the SHRAVASTI meditation approach, often His Holiness will begin when he teaches this. He will always begin by, not always, but often he will say that if we look at the word that is we call Zen, like Zen meditation, right? Actually, Zen is the Sino-Japanese word for what's known in Sanskrit as dhyana. Dhyana is also, in Pali is jhana, so it's meditation. But His Holiness said, but if you look at the way the Chinese write that word and the Japanese for Chan or Zen, it's a character composed of two parts. One part, which the first part we call the radical. The radical usually has no meaning, but in this case, you can play with it. There is meaning. The radical is the meaning of the one first part of this word is to reveal. Shu. Then the other part of this character is tan, which is singular. So to reveal and singular. Together, put together, is this word Chan, which in Japan is pronounced as Zen. So His Holiness say, this word tells us the nature of Bhavana. What are we cultivating when we say we cultivate? So he says, this word, to reveal and singular, we can learn the essence of what we're doing from this word. So the work of Chan or dhyana or meditation is to remain singular. To remain singular is to be undistracted, to not be distracted. Distracted by what, right? So that, again, we need to understand. Distracted by what? I said distracted by mental defilements. But more precisely, let's talk about something that we are all distracted by. These are known as the 8 worldly concerns. The 8 mundane concerns. These 8 worldly or mundane concerns can be divided into 2 columns. The like column and the don't like column. The like column is pleasure, gain, praise, and fame. Pleasure, gain, praise, and fame. The dislike column, pain, loss, blame, and infamy. Bad name. So these are the 8 worldly concerns. The pushing and the pulling winds. So they're sometimes called the 8 worldly winds. They blow very strongly. So we are tossed and turned on this boat, this little boat in the middle of this ocean of confusion and suffering. It is being blown left and right and up and down by these 8 winds. Because of that, we are distracted. This distraction means that we forget our true nature. So the practice of meditation is the practice of not being distracted by these 8 worldly concerns. So the other part of this word, right, Chan or Zen, is the radical that is to reveal, Shi, in modern Chinese. And so that also can tell us something, that this work is the work of revealing a quality of our nature, which is to say that, in fact, our most natural state is to be free from these 8 worldly concerns. Yeah, so to reveal. So in this sense, it's not emphasizing to cultivate. In this sense, it's sort of like, most of the weeds have been removed. You can now just enjoy watching your kale grow. You can enjoy just watching your dahlia flowers grow. So this is a different angle of emphasizing what Buddhist meditation is. to reveal this basic undistractedness of the mind. And the Mindfulness Sutra, that way, the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra doesn't begin, by saying, just reveal this undistracted nature. It begins from the level of, let's prepare this ground. Let's do weeding. And it takes us step by step in a sequence of 16 steps. And if now you're like, oh, I don't know, 16 steps, I don't know if I have time for that. 16 steps can also be reduced to 2. But we'll take time to look at the 16 steps. The Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra, of all the early teachings of the Buddha, it's the only instance, especially the 16 steps, it's the only instance where the Buddha explicitly talked about when you bhavana, right? When you cultivate this mind, chitta bhavana, what exactly are you doing? All the other teachings, and thousands of them, don't have the kind of details that this Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra has. And that is also mainly the reason why the head of this order, His Holiness the Drigom Kyabgon, has chosen this sutra to kind of be the basis of what he is teaching these days. So today, we have reached kind of the limit that we set for this class. I wonder if we could maybe take 2 or 3 questions, if there are 2 or 3 questions out there in the Zoom universe.
DOJRE LHOPON. Dr. Hanley?
Yes.
So if they have a question, they will unmute themselves to ask.
Okay. Yes. Yes, they can do that. Yeah. Yeah. We'll give a few minutes, and we don't want to go too late. Other people are busy, and I'm sure everybody has things to do, other distractions to attend to.
Okay, everyone, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself now.
Em ơi, em nói với thầy mà chị đi. Em nói với thầy dùm chị đi, chị không có, chị nói tiếng Việt cho em cho nó dễ. Chị muốn nói là thầy nói á, là coi như mình đi mình cũng đã thiền rồi chứ không phải mình không thiền.
Sure.
Nhưng mà mình coi như là mình đi sai.
Ở trong main room không có tiếng Việt nha chị. Chị nhắn vào cho dịch giả, nhưng mà chị nhắn câu hỏi.
Ok, chị nói về tiếng Anh đi. Yes, I think that we are on the we all of us is know what is the meditation, but we are on the wrong meditation, because normally when everybody have something happen to us, right away our mind have the answer. This is wrong, or this is right, and this is I love, and this is I not love. That's why it's not the right meditation. That's right.
Yes.
That's why now we need to know what is our
Correct.
Our true meditation, our true nature.
Yes.
That's
exactly.
right.
Exactly.
And we need to write it, and also we need to control all of our activity. That's every activity every day. We like every day we have 20 activity, and 20 activity. If we can control like that, we will know that what is the right way, and we go, and we can go to transform. You can go to deal with our karma. And if our karma is do very well, we more and more we become enlightenment. That's right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, Sister Chi, we are all friends. So she nicely summarized for us. Yeah, again, that we are all great meditators already. So don't worry so much about. Sometimes we say, "Oh, I cannot meditate." Yes, you can. We have been meditating all our lives, but just that we've been meditating the wrong things and creating all kinds of negative karma. We say. So now we have a choice, to create good karma, skillful karma. So good and bad in Buddhism means the causes that leads to happiness and suffering, respectively. It's not about judgment. It's not judging others or judging ourselves. You're not good enough. You are good enough. No, it's not about that. It's about what is skillful and what is unskillful. Yeah. So yes.
I think that's it for today. No more questions.
It seems there's a question. Somebody raised a hand in the Spanish room, maybe. So maybe we'll take one question from the Spanish room and then we'll dedicate.
Okay. Oh, he's translating.
Yeah. So, Yes. Hugo?
Hi.
Yes.
Hello, Dr. Lee. Well, I want to ask two questions, if it's possible. Why is this practice so necessary to understand and practice other practices, other, in other new levels? Yeah, and did you talk about 16 steps of this practice? I think. In this sort of course, we are going to take a view of all these full 16 steps. Thank you, and cheers from Cusco Sangha.
Okay. So Andres, go ahead and quickly translate the question. Also, Abraham in Vietnamese. So briefly, why is this particular practice important? And are we going to go through the 16? Yeah, so why is this particular practice, this particular, say, technique or approach important? So, of course, the immediate reason is, of course, the head of our lineage right now is emphasizing this. Yeah? So now, why is he emphasizing this? He says, this is the very roots and the very foundations of all the other forms of Buddhist meditation practices and techniques. In fact, the way he will teach this SHRAVASTI meditation, and he's still kind of teaching more and more, deeper and deeper. What you will see in the near future is that when he begins to teach more of this, all the other later techniques and practices, like even the practices that concerns like the control of the subtle energy and the movement of the subtle energy in the subtle body, all of that he will bring into this particular practice. Yes. Why? Because this is the very foundations. And he says, for the last 2,500 years plus, even though, the Buddha's teachings have gone to many places and being tested and verified by many different traditions, cultures, people from different parts of the world at different parts of human history, has developed many very helpful practices. Practices that kind of, in different areas, easier for those people. But he says, one danger that we're suffering now is we have forgotten the very roots of where it all began. So he wants us to go back to. And if you look at the earliest teachings, recorded teachings of the Buddha, actually, not only in this sutra do we find these 16 steps. Many other places in the recorded teachings of the Buddha, you find these 16 steps being emphasized. So it's very clear that in the early part of Buddhist history, this is what people were doing. So His Holiness said, we need to go back to that before we talk about all the other things that have been developed later. So that's the answer to the first question. Second one is, yes, hopefully we can go through the 16. And again, I hope that we are listening to this kind of from the heart, take it to heart and see, right? Does this make sense or not? Not like intellectually, but on the heart level, on the gut level, we can say, does this make sense or not? And if it makes sense, lean more into it and see. So this is the part where we have to verify through our own experience, through our own process. Thank you so much to everyone. So now we will do what's known as dedication at the end. So Chrissy, just look for the part Changchu Semjo Rinpoche. Is it there? So dedication, yeah, that one. So Changchu Semjo Rinpoche, yeah. So this is called the Bodhichitta dedication. In English, yeah, it says, Bodhichitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise, where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. So take a moment and reflect on how, if there's any good that came out of being here together, exploring these teachings, learning about these teachings, may that good go in the direction of this bodhicitta, which is the awakening mind, which is this resolve to become Buddha, to be awake for the benefit of all beings. Of course, you know, this idea of benefiting all beings sounds a little bombastic, sounds a little bit hypocritical even, you know, because in the next moment, I'm going to go fight with someone. I mean, that's just our habits, right? But as long as, you know, we on another level go, but I am trying, then that means we are, even when we are getting stuck and confused, we're actually making progress. Because without struggling with this being stuck and confused, no progress can happen. So we keep going in the direction of waking up. And this is saying, not only do I want to wake up for myself, but so that all beings everywhere can also arrive at the state of being awake. Buddha. Chanju sem chorim poche ma ge pa nam ge gyu chi ge pa nyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du be wo shu. Okay, Tata.
Thank you.
Gracias.
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 Thank you very
Bye-bye,
much.
everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Master, long life master.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
See you next
Have a
week.
nice